Kyle Morrison stood in the grand hall of the Varath Palace and tried not to stare. Everything around him was beautiful, in a way that made his chest hurt. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that caught the light and threw rainbows across the floor. The ceiling was so high, he could barely see it, and the aliens who filled the room looked at him like he was dirt on their expensive shoes. He was 28 years old and worked as a diplomatic attaché for Earth. That was a fancy way of saying he pushed papers and attended boring meetings. He was nobody special. He knew it. Everyone knew it. And that was exactly why he was here. Stand straight, Ambassador Chen whispered beside him. The older man looked uncomfortable in his formal suit. They're watching everything you do. One. Kyle straightened his shoulders and kept his face blank. The Varath were tall, almost 7 feet on average. Their skin was pale blue, smooth, and perfect. Their hair was silver and seemed to shine with its own light. They wore clothes that looked like they cost more than Kyle's yearly salary, and they looked at humans the way someone might look at a talking dog, surprised it could speak at all but not really impressed. Humans had been part of the Galactic Council for 15 years. In that time, they had learned one important truth. They were the joke of the galaxy. The Varath Empire was old. So old that human civilization was like a baby compared to it. They had technology that seemed like magic. They had ships that could cross the galaxy in weeks. They had weapons that could crack planets. And they made sure everyone knew how superior they were. High Chancellor Vorn stepped forward. He was even taller than the other Varath, and his silver robes marked him as someone important. His violet eyes looked at Kyle with something that might have been amusement. Ambassador Chen, Vorn said. His voice was smooth and cold. We are pleased to present you with a generous offer. A proposal that will strengthen the bonds between our peoples. Kyle felt his stomach twist. Nothing good ever came from proposals that started like that. The Emperor, in his wisdom and kindness, has decided to offer a marriage alliance, Vorn continued. Princess Lyra, youngest daughter of the Imperial House, will be joined with one of your people. A3. Rekid as well be use. Vorn continued. There was silence in the hall. Kyle could hear his own heartbeat. Marriage alliance? Between a Varath princess and a human? That was impossible. The Varath barely tolerated humans at diplomatic functions. They certainly didn't marry them. This is a great honor, Ambassador Chen said carefully. Kyle could hear the suspicion in his voice. Might I ask why the Emperor has made this decision? Vorn's smile didn't reach his eyes. The Emperor believes it is time to demonstrate our commitment to all Council species. Even the newest members deserve our consideration. Kyle had worked in diplomacy long enough to translate that. Even the newest members meant, even you primitives. Deserve our consideration meant, we're doing you a favor you don't deserve. The human chosen for this honor, Vorn said, and his eyes moved to Kyle. Is Kyle Morrison. Kyle's blood went cold. Him? Why him? He wasn't anyone important. He wasn't the ambassador. He wasn't a war hero, or a scientist, or anyone who mattered. Kyle Morrison is young and represents the best of human potential, Vorn said. The words sounded nice, but the way he said them made Kyle feel like an insect under glass. We believe he will be a suitable match for Princess Lyra. Ambassador Chen looked at Kyle, then back at Vorn. This is unexpected. We would need time to consider such an important proposal. Of course, Vorn said. But the Emperor hopes for an answer soon. Tomorrow, perhaps? That night, Kyle sat in his small quarters in the human diplomatic sector and tried to process what had happened. Ambassador Chen sat across from him, looking tired and worried. It's a trap, Kyle said. Of course it's a trap, Chen agreed. The question is, what kind of trap, and whether we can afford to refuse. Why me? Chen sighed. Because you're expendable. If they wanted to honor us, they'd ask for someone important. Instead, they asked for a mid-level attaché. It's an insult dressed up as a gift. Kyle felt anger rise in his chest. So, I'm supposed to marry an alien princess who probably hates humans just so Earth can save face? I made some calls, Chen said quietly. I talked to some of our intelligence contacts. They told me about Princess Lyra. Kyle waited. She's infertile, Chen said. Some genetic condition. The Vereth have been trying to fix it for decades, with all their advanced medicine. Nothing worked. She's considered a political embarrassment to the royal family. Understanding hit Kyle like a punch. They're giving us damaged goods. They get to look generous while making sure no half-human royal heir is ever born. And they get to laugh at us behind our backs. That's about the size of it, Chen agreed. And if I refuse, Earth's government will pressure you to accept. This could give us a direct connection to the Vereth royal family. Access we've been trying to get for years. Chen looked at him with something like sympathy. I'm sorry, Kyle. I know it's not fair. Kyle laughed. But there was no humor in it. Not fair? That's the story of humanity in the galaxy, isn't it? We're always one step behind. Always trying to prove we belong. What are you going to do? Kyle thought about it. He thought about his whole life spent being ordinary, being forgettable. He thought about humanity struggling for respect among aliens who saw them as primitive children. He thought about a princess he'd never met, who was probably just as trapped as he was. I'm going to say yes, he said finally. Chen looked surprised. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do, Kyle said. Because if I don't, they win. They get to mock us, and we get nothing. But if I say yes, if I go through with this, maybe something changes. Maybe not much, but something. 2 days later, Kyle met Princess Lyra for the first time. She was beautiful in the way all Verath were beautiful. Perfect and cold like a statue. She wore a white dress that seemed to float around her. Her silver hair fell to her waist. Her violet eyes looked at him without expression. They stood in a private room in the palace. A Vereth official read out the terms of their marriage in a bored voice. Neither Kyle nor Lyra spoke. When the official finished and left them alone, silence filled the room. Finally, Lyra spoke. Her voice was soft and sad. You do not have to do this. I know what they told you about me. I know why they chose you. I know too, Kyle said. Then you understand this marriage is a joke, an insult to both of us. Kyle looked at her and saw something in her eyes that surprised him. Pain. She was hurting just as much as he was. Maybe more. She had lived her whole life knowing her own people considered her defective. Maybe it is a joke, Kyle said. But I'm tired of being the punchline. Aren't you? Something flickered in Lyra's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. Yes, she said quietly. I am very tired of it. Then let's do this, Kyle said. Let's get married and see what happens. Maybe nothing changes. But maybe we surprise them. Lyra looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. The wedding was 3 weeks later. It was broadcast across the galaxy. Billions of beings watched as a human nobody married a Vereth princess that her own people wanted to hide away. The Vereth nobility barely hid their contempt. Other alien species watched with amusement, but as Kyle stood next to Lyra and made his vows, he felt something unexpected. Determination. They might have meant this as a joke, but he was going to make sure the last laugh was his. The first month of marriage was awkward. Kyle and Lyra lived in a suite of rooms in the palace that was bigger than Kyle's entire childhood home. They had separate bedrooms. They barely spoke to each other except when required to appear together at official functions. Kyle tried to start conversations. Lyra answered in short sentences and then retreated to her room. She moved through the palace like a ghost. Quiet and sad. The Vereth court watched them constantly. Kyle could feel eyes on them at every meal, every public appearance. The nobles whispered behind their hands and smiled, cold smiles. They were waiting for the marriage to fail. They wanted to see the joke play out to its conclusion. At night, Kyle lay in his bed and stared at the ceiling. He had known this would be difficult, but the reality was worse than he imagined. He was married to a woman who barely looked at him. He lived in a palace where everyone hated him. He represented a species that the galaxy saw as primitive and worthless, but Kyle was stubborn. It was a human trait. In the second month, Kyle started leaving books in the common room they shared. Human books, old ones from Earth, poetry, novels, history. He never mentioned them to Lyra. He just left them there. One morning, he found one of the books moved. Someone had been reading it. He started leaving different books. Science fiction, adventure stories, philosophy. Each one was moved by the next morning. In the third month, Kyle found Lyra sitting in the common room, reading one of his books. She looked up when he entered, and for a moment, he thought she might leave. But she didn't. "This story is strange," she said quietly. She held up a book of science fiction stories. "The humans in it are fighting a war they cannot win, but they keep fighting anyway." "Why?" Kyle sat down across from her. "Because that's what humans do. We're not the strongest or the smartest, but we don't give up. That seems foolish, maybe. But it's kept us alive this long." Lyra looked at the book again. "In my culture, we value logic, efficiency. Fighting a battle you cannot win is considered wasteful." "What do you value?" Kyle asked. "I mean you, not your culture." The question seemed to surprise her. She was quiet for a long time. "I do not know. No one has ever asked me that before." Kyle felt sad for her. She was almost 200 years old, and no one had ever asked her what she wanted. "You have time to figure it out," he said. After that, they started talking more. Small conversations at first. Lyra asked about Earth. Kyle asked about Vareth. They were still formal with each other, still careful. But the wall between them began to crack. In the fourth month, Kyle introduced Lyra to human music. She was fascinated by it. Vareth music was complex and mathematical. Human music was emotional, messy, full of feeling. "This music is about sadness," Lyra said, listening to a slow piano piece. "But it is beautiful." "How can sadness be beautiful?" "Because it's real," Kyle said. "Humans feel things deeply. We're sad, and happy, and angry, and loving, all at once. Our music shows that." "Vareth do not show emotion like this," Lyra said. "We are taught to control ourselves, to be perfect." "That sounds lonely." Lyra looked at him, and for the first time, she really looked at him. Not as a political problem or a joke. As a person, "It is lonely," she said softly. In the fifth month, Lyra told Kyle about her condition. They were sitting in the palace gardens, which were full of plants from a dozen worlds. The air smelled like flowers Kyle had no names for. "They have examined me since I was young," Lyra said. She stared at the flowers as she spoke. Every doctor, every specialist. They all said the same thing. "My reproductive system is damaged. A genetic mutation. 1 in 10 million of our people has it." "I'm sorry," Kyle said. "Do not be sorry. Be disgusted. That is what everyone else is." Her voice was bitter. "In Vareth culture, children are everything. They carry on our genetic legacy. They prove our worth. I cannot have children, so I have no worth." "That's wrong," Kyle said. Lyra laughed, but it was a sad sound. "Is it? I have been tested by technology beyond anything your species possesses. I have been treated with every therapy known to medical science. Nothing worked. The best doctors in the galaxy have declared me infertile. It is not wrong. It is fact." Kyle thought about how to respond. He thought about all the things he could say, all the empty, comforting words. Then he decided on the truth. "You're unique," he said. 1 in 10 million. That doesn't make you broken. It makes you rare. Lyra turned to look at him. Her violet eyes were wet with tears. She was trying to hold back. You do not understand, she said. Your people value individuality. We value perfection. I am imperfect. That is why they gave me to you. You are human, considered genetically inferior. I am Verath, but defective. They put two worthless things together and called it diplomacy. I understand more than you think, Kyle said. I was chosen because I'm nobody special. Just an ordinary guy. In human terms, I'm forgettable. But here's the thing, Lyra. I don't think either of us is worthless. I think they're wrong. You are kind, Lyra said. But kindness does not change genetics. Maybe not. But it changes everything else. In the 6th month, something shifted between them. Kyle couldn't pinpoint when it happened exactly. Maybe it was the day Lyra laughed at one of his jokes. Really laughed. Bright and surprised. Maybe it was the night they stayed up until dawn, talking about philosophy and arguing about whether hope or logic was more important. Maybe it was the morning Kyle woke up and found Lyra asleep on the couch in their common room, a book on her chest, and he covered her with a blanket without waking her. The Verath court noticed the change, too. The whispers grew louder. Some nobles seemed annoyed that the joke was taking so long to fail. Others seemed confused that Lyra seemed happier than she had been in years. High Chancellor Vorn cornered Kyle at a diplomatic function. You seem comfortable here, Vorn said. His voice was smooth, but his eyes were cold. I remember, Kyle said. He kept his voice level. Do you? Vorn's smile didn't change. The princess seems fond of you. How unfortunate that nothing will come of it. She is, as you know, incapable of providing heirs. She's also capable of hearing you, Kyle said. How very human of you, Vorn said. Your species always was overly emotional. He walked away, leaving Kyle angry and shaking. That night, Kyle told Lyra about the conversation. They were sitting together on the couch, closer than they used to sit. Somewhere along the way, they had stopped being strangers. He wants you to hate me, Lyra said. He wants this marriage to fail, so he can prove humans are not worthy of respect. Created. We have not worthy. We wants this marriage to fail. Well, he's going to be disappointed, Kyle said. Lyra looked at him. Why do you care? You could ask for an annulment. Return to Earth. Find a human woman who can give you children. I don't want to leave, Kyle said. He realized as he said it that it was true. I like being here. With you, Kyle. I'm not saying this to make you feel obligated, Kyle said quickly. I'm saying it because it's true. These past months, getting to know you, it's been the best time of my life. You're smart and funny and kind. You see things in ways I never thought of. When I'm with you, I feel like I matter. Lyra was crying now, tears running down her blue cheeks. I feel the same. You make me feel like I am more than my genetics. Like I am a person who has value. You do have value, Kyle said. He took her hand. So much value. I cannot give you children. I don't care. You should care. Your family line will be fine, Kyle interrupted. I have 3 brothers back on Earth. They'll have plenty of kids. The Morrison family genetics will survive without me. Lyra laughed through her tears. You are very strange. I'm human. We're all strange. She leaned against him, and he put his arm around her. They sat like that for a long time. I think I am falling in love with you, Lyra whispered. Is that foolish? If it is, then I'm foolish too, Kyle said. Because I love you. They kissed for the first time that night. It was gentle and sweet, and felt like the most natural thing in the world. The Verath court could whisper all they wanted. High Chancellor Vorn could plot and scheme. The galaxy could laugh at the joke of their marriage. Kyle and Lyra didn't care anymore. They had found something real. Something that mattered more than politics or genetics or what anyone else thought. They had found each other. 10 months after the wedding, Lyra woke up feeling sick. It started small. Just a little nausea in the mornings. She thought maybe she had eaten something that disagreed with her. Humans and Vareth ate different foods. But lately she had been trying some of Kyle's favorite dishes from Earth. But the sickness didn't go away. After a week, it got worse. She felt tired all the time. Her body felt strange, like something was changing inside her. She tried to hide it from Kyle, but he noticed everything about her now. "You should see a doctor," Kyle said one morning. He brought her tea and sat on the edge of their bed. They shared a bedroom now. It had happened gradually over the past few months, until one day Lyra realized she couldn't sleep without him next to her. "It is nothing," Lyra said. "Please," Kyle said. "For me. Just get checked out." So Lyra went to the palace medical wing. She expected them to give her some medicine and send her away. Instead, the doctor ran tests. Then ran them again. Then called in another doctor. Then another. Lyra sat on the examination table and felt fear creep up her spine. "What is wrong?" The head physician, an old Vareth named Dr. Sorrel, looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. "Princess, we need to run more tests. Please wait here." An hour passed. Then, another. Lyra's fear grew into panic. Was she dying? Had some human disease infected her? She wanted Kyle. Wanted him to hold her hand and tell her everything would be okay. Finally, Dr. Sorrel returned with 3 other specialists. They all looked shocked. "Princess Lyra," Dr. Sorrel said slowly, like he couldn't believe the words coming out of his mouth. "You are pregnant." The world stopped. Lyra stared at him. "That is not possible. We have run every test 3 times," another doctor said. "There is no doubt. You are approximately 11 weeks along. But I cannot. You said I could never." "We were wrong," Dr. Sorrel said simply. "Or, rather, something has changed. Something we do not understand." Lyra put her hand on her stomach. 11 weeks. She tried to think back. Yes, that would be about right. She and Kyle had become intimate about 3 months ago. But it was impossible. Every doctor, every test, for her entire life had said it was impossible. "I need to see Kyle," she whispered. They brought him to the medical wing. He ran into the room, his face full of worry. "Lyra, what's wrong?" "They wouldn't tell me anything." Lyra looked at him. She didn't know how to say it. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Dr. Sorrel spoke instead. "Congratulations. You are going to be a father." Kyle froze. "What?" "I am pregnant," Lyra said. Her voice shook. "Kyle, I am pregnant." Kyle's face went through several emotions at once. Shock, confusion, joy, then worry as he saw her tears. "That's good, right? That's amazing. Why are you crying?" "Because I am scared," Lyra said. "I do not understand how this is possible. What if it is wrong? What if the tests are mistaken?" "They are not mistaken," Dr. Sorrel said firmly. "We have confirmed it multiple times with different technologies. There is a child growing inside you, Princess. A healthy child." Kyle crossed the room and pulled Lyra into his arms. She buried her face in his chest and cried. She cried from fear and joy and confusion all mixed together. "It's okay," Kyle whispered. "We'll figure this out together. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." The news spread through the palace like fire. By the next morning, the entire Vareth Empire knew. By that evening, the whole galaxy knew. A human had succeeded where Vareth medical science had failed for decades. A primitive species, from a backwater planet, had done the impossible. The reactions were explosive. High Chancellor Vorn looked like someone had punched him in the stomach when he heard. His carefully planned joke had backfired in the worst way possible. The worthless human and the defective princess were having a child. A child that would be part of the Vareth royal line. The Emperor called an emergency council meeting. Kyle and Lyra were summoned to attend. The council chamber was full of angry Vareth nobles. They shouted over each other, their perfect composure cracking. This is impossible. The tests must be wrong. She must have been unfaithful with a Vareth male. Silence. The Emperor's voice rang out. He sat on his throne, looking old and tired. Genetic testing has already been done. The child is half human, half Vareth. There is no doubt about paternity. Then how? Someone demanded. We have the best medical technology in the galaxy. We examined the princess for decades. How did a human succeed where we failed? Dr. Sorrel stepped forward. He looked excited, like a scientist who had just discovered something incredible. I believe I have an answer. With the princess's permission. I have been studying her genetic code since the pregnancy was confirmed. And, the Emperor asked, human DNA is unusual. Dr. Sorrel said, humans are still evolving rapidly compared to most spacefaring species. Their genetic code has a high degree of flexibility and adaptability. When Princess Lyra and Kyle Morrison's genetic material combined, something remarkable happened. The human DNA triggered a repair mechanism in the princess's reproductive system. That is not possible, another doctor said. We tried gene therapy for years. It did nothing. Because we were trying to fix the problem with Vareth genetics, Dr. Sorrel said. Vareth DNA is stable, refined over millions of years of evolution. But that stability also makes it inflexible. Human DNA is messy, chaotic, still changing. That chaos somehow broke through the genetic block that made the princess infertile. The chamber fell silent. You are saying, High Chancellor Vorn said slowly, his face red with anger, that human genetic inferiority is what made this possible? Number 7. What number 7? No, Dr. Sorrel said firmly. I am saying that human genetic flexibility is what made this possible. Adaptability is not inferiority. It is a different kind of strength. This is absurd, Vorn snapped. We are the Vareth Empire. We have perfected our genetics over millions of years. We cannot accept that a primitive species somehow succeeded where we failed. Yet here we are, the Emperor said quietly. He looked at Lyra, and his expression softened. My daughter is carrying a child we all believed impossible. That is a fact. Regardless of how uncomfortable it makes us. The child cannot be considered a legitimate heir, Vorn argued. It is half human. To allow it into the line of succession would be a corruption of Vareth genetic purity. Enough. The Emperor stood. This council is dismissed. I will make my decision, in time. As the council members filed out, many of them gave Kyle and Lyra hostile looks. Kyle held Lyra's hand tightly. He could feel her, shaking. That night, in their rooms, Lyra finally broke down. They hate us, she said. They hate our child, and it is not even born yet. They're scared, Kyle said. He held her close. They built their whole culture on genetic superiority. We just proved them wrong. That's terrifying for them. What if they try to hurt us? Hurt our baby? Then we fight, Kyle said. His voice was hard. I won't let anyone hurt you, or our child. I promise. Lyra looked up at him. You have changed. When I first met you, you were quiet and careful. Now you sound like a warrior. I'm protecting my family. Kyle said simply. That's what humans do. We might not be the biggest or the strongest, but when someone threatens our family, we become dangerous. Over the next weeks, the political storm grew worse. Other alien species began commenting on the pregnancy. Some were fascinated. Some were skeptical. Some were worried about what it meant for their own cultures. On Earth, there was celebration. Humanity's first hybrid child with an advanced alien species. Scientists scrambled to understand the genetics. Politicians saw opportunity, but Kyle and Lyra just tried to survive each day. They faced hostility from the Vareth court. They dealt with constant medical examinations. They survived 2 assassination attempts by Varath extremists, who believed the pregnancy was an abomination. Through it all, they held on to each other. One night, Lyra put Kyle's hand on her stomach. "Do you feel that?" Kyle felt a small flutter against his palm. "That's our baby," he whispered. "Our baby," Lyra repeated. She smiled despite everything. "The impossible baby." "Nothing is impossible," Kyle said. "That's what humans believe. We look at impossible things, and we do them anyway." "I am glad I married a human," Lyra said softly. "I am glad I married you." "Best joke anyone ever played on us," Kyle said. They laughed together, holding each other in the darkness, feeling their impossible child move between them. The pregnancy became the biggest news in the galaxy. Every news service, every diplomatic channel, every social network across 100 worlds talked about nothing else. A human and a Varath were having a child. The impossible had happened. For the Vareth Empire, it was a disaster. High Chancellor Vorn led a faction of nobles who wanted the marriage annulled immediately. They held emergency meetings. They drafted laws. They argued in the council chambers, with voices that shook with rage. "This child cannot be allowed to claim Varath heritage," Vorn declared in a public speech. "Our genetic line has remained pure for 8 million years. To allow contamination now would be a betrayal of everything we are." Ambassador Chen watched the speech from Earth and shook his head. Contamination. They're calling a baby contamination. The human government saw opportunity. They pushed hard, demanding immediate access to Vareth technology. They wanted seats on important galactic committees. They wanted trade agreements and military alliances. Chen tried to slow them down. "We need to be careful. If we push too hard, we'll make things worse." But the politicians on Earth didn't listen. They saw weakness in the Vareth Empire and wanted to exploit it. On Vareth Prime, Kyle and Lyra lived under constant guard. After the second assassination attempt, the Emperor assigned a full security team to protect them. They couldn't leave their rooms without soldiers following them. "I feel like a prisoner," Lyra said. She was 4 months pregnant now. Her stomach was starting to show. She put her hand on it constantly, as if protecting the life inside. "We're the most famous couple in the galaxy," Kyle said. He tried to smile. "That comes with problems. They want to kill our child. They want to kill what our child represents," Kyle corrected. "They're scared of change." Dr. Sorrel visited them often. He was one of the few Vareth who seemed genuinely excited about the pregnancy, rather than horrified. "The child is developing perfectly," he told them during one visit. "Better than perfectly, actually. The combination of human and Vareth genetics is creating something remarkable." "Remarkable how?" Kyle asked. "The child will have Varath longevity," Dr. Sorrel explained. "They could live for 800 years or more. But they will also have human genetic adaptability. Their immune system will be incredibly strong. Their ability to heal will be enhanced. In many ways, this child will be superior to either parent species." "Do not say that where the council can hear you," Lyra said. "They already believe we are a threat. The truth is a threat to them." Dr. Sorrel said, "That is their problem, not yours." Meanwhile, other alien species began paying attention. Scientists from a dozen worlds requested permission to study the pregnancy. Some species that had written off humans as genetically incompatible started reconsidering. The Tharn Collective, a powerful coalition of 4 alien species, sent a delegation to meet with Kyle and Lyra. The meeting was tense. The Tharn were insectoid, with hard shells and multiple eyes. They spoke through translators. "We wish to understand how this occurred," the lead Tharn said. "We believed humans to be genetically primitive. This pregnancy suggests we were wrong. Humans aren't primitive," Kyle said. He was getting tired of people calling his species primitive. "We're different. There's a difference." "Indeed," the Tharn said. We are now researching human genetic compatibility with our own species. If successful, it could solve our declining birth rate problem. 1. After they left, Lyra looked at Kyle. Do you understand what is happening? We are changing the galaxy. Our child is making other species see humans differently. I just wanted to marry you and be happy, Kyle said. I didn't want to start a revolution. Too late, Lyra said. She smiled, but it was a tired smile. We are the revolution now. In the Verith Council, debates raged. Some members wanted to force Lyra to terminate the pregnancy. Others wanted to exile her and Kyle from the Empire. Still others suggested taking the child away after birth and raising it as purely Verath. The Emperor listened to all of it and said nothing. He was old, almost 1,000 years. He had ruled the Empire for 3 centuries. He looked more tired with each passing day. High Chancellor Vorn grew desperate. If the child was born and recognized as legitimate, it would be in line for the throne. It would be a living symbol that Verith genetic superiority was a lie. He couldn't allow that. He began planning carefully. He reached out to military commanders who shared his views. He contacted nobles who had the most to lose from change. He built a network of people who believed, as he did, that Verith purity was more important than anything else. Lyra knew none of this. But she felt the hatred growing. She felt it in the way some Verith looked at her. She felt it in the whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room. Something is wrong, she told Kyle. Something worse than before. I feel it too, Kyle admitted. The ambassador warned me that the political situation is getting dangerous. What can we do? Survive, Kyle said. Keep our heads down. Protect our child. But keeping their heads down wasn't enough. Lyra decided to speak. If people hated her, if they wanted to hurt her child, she would face them directly. She requested permission to address the Verith Council. This is a bad idea, Kyle said. They'll attack you. Let them, Lyra said. I am tired of hiding. I am tired of being ashamed. I want our child to see that their mother fought for them. The council chamber was packed the day Lyra spoke. Every member of the Verith nobility was there. The speech was broadcast across the Empire and the galaxy. Lyra stood before them, visibly pregnant now, her hands resting on her stomach. She wore a simple blue dress. Her silver hair was pulled back. She looked young and vulnerable, and absolutely determined. I stand before you as your princess, she began. Her voice was steady. I stand before you as a Verath who has been called defective, worthless, an embarrassment. You gave me to a human, as a joke, as proof of my failure and his primitiveness. The chamber was silent. But that human saw something you did not, Lyra continued. He saw me as a person, not a genetic profile, not a political tool, a person with worth. And in seeing me that way, he gave me something all your advanced medicine could not. He gave me hope. He gave me love. And yes, he gave me a child. Some council members shifted uncomfortably. You call my child contamination, Lyra said. And now anger crept into her voice. You call the life growing inside me an abomination. But I call them a miracle. I call them proof that we have been wrong. We have spent millions of years perfecting our genetics, making ourselves stable and pure. But in doing so, we forgot something important. What? Someone called out. What did we forget? We forgot how to adapt, Lyra said. We forgot that life finds a way. We forgot that sometimes the strongest thing is not perfection, but flexibility. My husband's people understand this. They are young and chaotic, and full of emotions we consider primitive. High Chancellor Vorn stood. You speak of survival as if we are failing. The Verith Empire has stood for 8 million years. Standing still, Lyra said. You speak of our empire lasting 8 million years as if it is a triumph. But in all that time, what have we become? We are so afraid of change that we call it child contamination. We are so obsessed with purity that we forgot what it means to grow. You betray your own people, Vorn said. I honor my people by telling the truth, Lyra replied. The truth is that my human husband succeeded where all of you failed. Not because he is superior, but because he was different, because his genetics brought something new, something we needed. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of nobles who had whispered about her for decades. You gave me to Kyle Morrison as a joke, she said. You thought you were ridiculing both of us. Instead, you gave me the greatest gift of my life. You gave me a partner who sees my worth. You gave me a love I never thought I would have, and you gave me a child who will be a bridge between our peoples. That child will destroy everything we are, Vorn said. No, Lyra said firmly. That child will save what we should be. If you cannot see that, then you are the ones who are defective. Not me. Not my husband. Not our baby. You. The chamber erupted. Some nobles shouted in anger. Others sat in shocked silence. A few, a very few, looked thoughtful. Lyra walked out with her head high. Kyle waited for her outside. He pulled her into his arms. That was amazing, he whispered. You were amazing. I am so scared, Lyra admitted, shaking. But I had to say it. I know. That night, Dr. Sorrel came to their rooms. He looked worried. I have heard rumors, he said quietly. High Chancellor Vorn is planning something. He has the support of some military units. There is talk of forcing the Emperor to act against you. What kind of action? Kyle asked. I do not know. But you should be careful. Very careful. After he left, Kyle held Lyra close. Outside their window, the lights of the Vereth capital glowed in the darkness. Somewhere out there, people were plotting against them. Against their child. We're going to make it through this, Kyle said. All three of us. Promise me, Lyra said. I promise. He meant it. He didn't know how yet. But he would keep his family safe. He was human. Humans were stubborn. And when it came to protecting the people they loved, humans didn't back down. The storm was coming. But they would face it together. 9 months after the pregnancy began, Lyra went into labor. It happened in the middle of the night. Kyle woke to find her gripping his arm, her face tight with pain. It is time, she said. Kyle's heart jumped into his throat. He called for help, and within minutes, their rooms were full of medical staff. They moved Lyra to the palace medical wing on a floating stretcher. Kyle held her hand the entire way. The medical wing was prepared. Dr. Sorrel had assembled a team of specialists from multiple species. Everyone wanted to witness this moment. The first human Verath hybrid birth. A piece of history. You are doing wonderfully, Dr. Sorrel told Lyra. Monitors surrounded her, showing things Kyle didn't understand. The child is healthy. Everything is progressing normally. Labor lasted 6 hours. Kyle stayed by Lyra's side, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, telling her she was strong and brave. His own fear threatened to choke him, but he pushed it down. Lyra needed him to be strong. Finally, a cry filled the room. A baby's cry. It is a girl, Dr. Sorrel said. He held up a tiny form, cleaning her gently. A healthy baby girl. Kyle stared. His daughter was beautiful. She was small and perfect. Her skin was a pale purple, halfway between Lyra's blue and Kyle's tan. She had a small nose and tiny fingers that gripped at the air. And when Dr. Sorrel brought her close, Kyle saw her eyes. Violet, like her mother's. Hello, Emma, Kyle whispered. They had chosen the name weeks ago. Emma, Morrison, Verath. Hello, little one. Lyra held their daughter for the first time and cried. Happy tears this time. She is beautiful. Kyle, she is so beautiful. She looks like you, Kyle said. She has your stubbornness. I can already see it in her face. They laughed together, exhausted and overwhelmed and happier than they had ever been. The news spread instantly. Images of the baby were broadcast across the galaxy. A human father holding his hybrid daughter. A Vereth princess crying tears of joy. The impossible child who shouldn't exist. Reactions were mixed. Some species celebrated, others were uncertain. On Earth, there was celebration in the streets. Humanity had produced a child with one of the galaxy's oldest and most advanced species. They weren't inferior anymore. They were something new. In the Vereth Empire, the reaction was more complicated. Many nobles were horrified. But ordinary Vereth citizens saw something different. They saw their princess, who they had pitied for so long, finally happy. They saw a baby who looked fragile and innocent. Some hearts began to soften. The Emperor came to visit the next day. He was an old Vereth with silver hair and tired eyes. He looked at his granddaughter for a long time. "May I hold her?" he asked quietly. Lyra hesitated, then nodded. She placed Emma carefully in her father's arms. The Emperor looked down at the tiny baby. She was sleeping, making small sounds. Something changed in the Emperor's face. The hardness that had been there for so long cracked. He looked at Emma and saw not a political problem or a genetic controversy. He saw a baby, his granddaughter. "She is perfect," he whispered. "Lyra, she is perfect." "Yes," Lyra said softly. "She is." The Emperor looked up at Kyle. "Thank you for loving my daughter. Thank you for giving her this gift. She gave me just as much," Kyle said. The Emperor smiled, a real smile. "I have made mistakes. I have let pride and tradition blind me. No more." 2 days later, the Emperor addressed the Verath Council. The chamber was tense. Everyone knew this would be a critical moment. "I have made a decision regarding my granddaughter," the Emperor announced. "Emma Morrison Verath is recognized as a legitimate member of the royal house. She will be in the line of succession. The marriage between Princess Lyra and Kyle Morrison is formally honored and blessed." High Chancellor Vorn stood immediately. "You cannot do this. The Council will never accept it." "The Council will accept what I decree," the Emperor said. His voice was hard. "I am still Emperor, and I have allowed you all to control me for too long with fear and tradition." "This is madness," Vorn said. "You will destroy everything we have built." "No," the Emperor said. "I will save it. For too long, we have been static, unchanging, dying, though we were too proud to see it. This child represents something we desperately need. New life, new possibilities." Vorn's face went red. "Then you leave me. No choice." He made a signal. Doors burst open. Soldiers in Verath military armor flooded into the council chamber. They wore the insignia of units loyal to Vorn. "This is a coup," Ambassador Chen said from his seat in the diplomatic section. "Vorn, you're making a terrible mistake." "I am saving the Empire," Vorn said. "Emperor, you will step down. Princess Lyra and her human will be exiled. The child will be taken into protective custody and raised properly." The Emperor stood calmly. "You would threaten me in my own palace?" "If necessary." For a moment, everything hung in balance. The soldiers stood ready. Vorn looked triumphant. The Emperor looked old and alone. Then more soldiers entered the chamber. These wore different insignia. The Imperial Guard. They surrounded the Emperor and pointed their weapons at Vorn's soldiers. "Lower your weapons," the guard commander said. "You are committing treason." Vorn looked around wildly. "The military supports me. I have arranged everything." "You arranged with some commanders," the guard commander said. "But most of the military does not follow you. We saw Princess Lyra's speech. We heard her words. Many of us have children. We cannot look at a baby and call it contamination." This is impossible, Vorn said. Seems like impossible things keep happening, Kyle said. He had entered the chamber with Lyra, who held Emma. They had been watching from a private viewing room. You should get used to it. Vorn stared at them with pure hatred. You have destroyed everything. No, Lyra said. We have saved it. You just cannot see that yet. Vorn and his co-conspirators were arrested. The Emperor, showing mercy that surprised everyone, chose exile rather than execution. Vorn was sent to a remote colony world, far from the centers of power. In the days that followed, the Emperor pushed through sweeping changes. He proposed new laws to the Galactic Council. Laws protecting mixed species families. Laws preventing genetic discrimination. The Galactic Council debated for weeks. Finally, they voted. The laws passed. Earth's representatives stood during the vote. Humanity has been called primitive since we joined this council. We were mocked, dismissed, considered barely worthy of membership. But a human succeeded where advanced species failed. Not through technology or military power. Through something simpler. Through love and acceptance and the willingness to see worth in another person. The speech was simple, but it resonated. Species that had dismissed humans before started paying attention. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges began. Humans were still the newcomers. But they weren't the joke anymore. Kyle was offered the position of full ambassador to the Vareth Empire. He accepted. He and Lyra became diplomatic partners, working together to strengthen bonds between their peoples. 3 years passed. Emma grew into a bright, curious toddler. She had her mother's grace and her father's stubborn determination. She learned faster than human or Vareth children, speaking full sentences by age 2. Dr. Sorrel documented everything, fascinated by how the hybrid genetics expressed themselves. She is remarkable, he told Kyle during one examination. Her immune system is stronger than either parent species. Her cognitive development is accelerated. She may live for 1,000 years or more. I just hope she's happy, Kyle said. They seeing for, she will be extraordinary, Dr. Sorrel said. But yes, I hope she is happy too. Other human-Vareth relationships formed. 5 more marriages in 3 years. 2 resulted in pregnancies. The impossible was becoming normal. Kyle and Lyra hosted diplomatic functions now. Other species came to meet them, to see the family that had changed the galaxy. Some came out of curiosity. Some came seeking similar unions for their own people. One evening, Kyle stood on their balcony, overlooking the Vareth capital. The city glowed with lights, beautiful and ancient. Lyra joined him, carrying Emma, who was sleepy and rubbing her eyes. Read story, Emma said. She held up a book, one of Kyle's old books from Earth. All right, little one, Kyle said. They sat together on the couch, the 3 of them. Kyle opened the book. Emma snuggled against him, her small hand holding his finger. Daddy, Emma said as he read, why does the book say, humans are special? Kyle and Lyra looked at each other. It was a big question for a 3-year-old. Lyra answered, because they taught us that worth is not something you are born with. It is something you prove through kindness and strength and love. Oh, Emma said. She thought about it with a serious expression. Am I special too? Am I special too? You are the most special, Kyle said. Because you're ours. Emma smiled and snuggled closer. Kyle continued reading. Across the galaxy, on a remote colony world, High Chancellor Vorn watched a news broadcast. It showed Kyle and Lyra at a galactic summit. Emma sitting between them. The child was laughing at something, bright and happy. The joke Vorn had engineered 3 years ago had backfired completely. The worthless princess was now respected. The primitive human was an ambassador. Their impossible child was changing the galaxy. Vorn's face was unreadable. Perhaps he felt regret. Perhaps he felt only bitterness. But as he watched the family on the screen, Something in his expression shifted. Not acceptance. Not yet. But maybe, just maybe, the first small seed of understanding. The galaxy had changed. It would keep changing. And at the center of that change was a simple truth that humanity had always known. Love was stronger than genetics. Hope was more powerful than tradition. And sometimes, the best way to face the impossible was to do it anyway. Emma fell asleep against her father's chest as he read. Lyra rested her head on Kyle's shoulder. Outside, the Verith capital stretched into the night, ancient and beautiful, and finally, slowly, learning to grow again. The joke had become a triumph. The worthless had become priceless, and the impossible had become real. It was, Kyle thought as he held his family close, a pretty good ending to a story that had started as an insult. But really, it was just the beginning.